Oh, the try is great.
That's a good subject switch.
No, it's really good.
Oh, now I have the house.
Took a long time on it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are online now.
I just can't. No chocolate.
Actually.
Could be a consolation prize, yeah. I should know better.
That'll teach you.
Oh, she does too. Pass it over to her. It's very
Do you
strong
want to,
tasting.
you can change that chair.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Yeah. I got this.
I think it's good now, but it's good to make.
Well, no, it's just I don't want it to creep too much, or, you know.
I don't think so.
I think it's
Cushion doesn't
okay.
stop it from cooking.
I'll be
No,
good.
cushions, I just meant if you didn't want to rocking
No,
chair.
no, you don't.
Straight chair.
No, no. Okay, so it's normal.
Okay, so I have a question.
That's regular chocolate.
Well,
Oh, this way.
Dude. Okay. Who do you think I am, you? I'm gonna start charging, okay? Pay your commission. Yeah, you want that? Nah. It's good chocolate.
that is good.
Oh.
You can,
I should-
it's
I should
on
just-
the bell.
You're turning around, Peter.
Okay. Two more little pieces,
Number of
one for each of you.
crazy people.
Hi, guys.
Okay.
For those of you in the north, it's springtime here, can you tell?
I am. Oh, God.
Come visit.
All right. Before I was so
Oh,
googly.
good. Okay, I can start. Okay. Yay.
On a teleconference, whatever those are called, about 2 weeks ago, I told a lady, just spend a month not noticing, and every time you notice you're fucking up, make yourself stop. And so I was like, okay, I'll try that. So I've been trying that.
What's that like?
Well, at first I felt bad, like, oh, I'm gonna miss something, and then I felt, after a while, I felt, well, one thing you notice is that nothing is solid. So noticing isn't solid. It's infiltrated with not noticing, and then not noticing is infiltrated with noticing.
Yes, that is the
I figured-
punchline.
I figured that's probably what you were getting at.
That's the
But
punchline.
but at the same time, I'm having a hard time with the same stuff. So I went through a lot of rocky stuff, and I didn't have any. Usually, I would try. Okay, I'm going to notice and feel a little better, but I didn't do that. I made a point of not doing that,
Wow.
and I noticed that I didn't feel any worse than I would have, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And then, but the biggest benefit is that all the dogma surrounded with noticing, meaning all the things you talk about that are part of your noticing, that all went out very good.
Yeah, they're very excellent.
Yeah, that part is really good. So I'm still only I had 2 more weeks to go. The 17th, I put it on my calendar.
Wow.
You're being very dutiful.
Giving yourself a
I am.
deadline. Well, she's like that.
happens.
I like that.
If she gets a beam on something, it's.
No, yeah, if I do it, I really do it. So, but it's really fun when I'm doing things that normally kind of bring out noticing, like walking.
Yeah.
And I'll start looking at something.
Yeah.
Cut that out.
Noticing is obviously good. Noticing is the yoga, but it's very easy to make a game of noticing and contrast it with some imputed not noticing, and that's where you hit a brick wall, because you're dividing. You know, that doesn't take you to. The point is to get to the fullness of what everything is all the time. So once you noticing, that's great, but then you have to let go of it as you're doing, so that you can see that not noticing is actually the same thing as noticing, and then it opens into the completeness of what it is, and you're free of that, you know, gamesmanship and self-punishing thing of having
I'm
a
not
carrot
noticing.
on
I'm
a
not
carrot on a
awake enough.
string of, oh, I have to notice. I'm
Yeah.
not noticing. I'm failing. You know.
I'm not awake enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, I wasn't worried about it. I knew noticing would come anyway, but that didn't worry me. the fact that it does, it's just kind of reassuring.
Yeah.
Like some people would think, oh boy, then if I don't try for this, it won't happen at all, and I'll
Yeah.
be totally lost. But I knew that wouldn't happen.
No. And but the main thing is you notice how the line between noticing and not noticing, so-called, is blurry to the point of non-existence.
Yeah, and that's more, that was more true than I expected. Especially,
Yeah, but this is
especially when
exactly.
you try not to notice, and noticing is just infiltrated there in little tiny parts. It's never completely black, like you would expect.
Yeah,
So that's cool.
all dimensions are always present. Well, that's very good.
Uh-oh, now I'm just noticing. Uh-oh. Let me think of it. Let me go in a daydream here.
But you don't necessarily about it.
I'm teasing.
I know, I understand, but having gotten the point, you can then let go of it.
Well, maybe I don't need to do a month, all right.
That's right.
Probably not.
Well, you just finished your project ahead of time, right? So you can start a new project.
You're just very skilled.
Okay,
You have
let's make a
exceptional
project
ability.
then. What do you know how to
If you needed a new project, the way to find that out is to see where there seems to be a problem, if anywhere. Or where there seems to be anything that seems to be anything.
do? Does it be anything, be a problem I can define or think I can define?
Well, anything that you can define is what constitutes a problem in actuality. But anything that seems to be, if you're so far gone that you're defining things as problems, then that's heavy-handed defining. But more refinedly, anything that it can be defined at all is like an indicator of, it's something to look at.
Anything that might be a problem is a problem. You know?
Right. Too slow. They're way too fast for me. They just scare about to go under the furniture.
I'll try to slow down and see if that works. Yeah, I think defining happens, particularly when I'm going through my day, it's parts of it are pretty quick. And so it's like, okay, that's that, and then that's, something else happens. I just defined all kinds of things, but I didn't have the time to reflect on it.
And
notice
again,
that it's a lot.
it's not a matter of not defining. It's not a matter of, oh, there I go defining again, let me try to not define. It's just a matter of noticing that defining, it doesn't actually define anything. So, defining is a spontaneous, mode of your intelligence, and it will do that. But when it does that, nothing has actually happened.
To define
Of course,
forever.
of course. But defining isn't really defining. It's creating a caricature. It's creating a generalization, which is not the actuality. It's like shorthand. It's like shorthand. It's like a caption. It's not wholly untrue, but it's not at all true. It's not at all accurate.
But the habit of making shorthands won't go away.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to. There's nothing wrong with that. The point is, as always, not to change anything, but to see what it is. And when you see that defining isn't actually defining, then you're free of being entrapped by defining, which also happens to be the cutting edge of liberation. When you're completely defining, that's the hallmark of liberation. But it definitely does not necessarily mean the cessation of that activity of apparent defining. It's like all aspects of functioning of the personality continue. A lot of in spirituality, I think a lot of people have the idea of, the ego has to die, my personality has to become saintly, or I don't know what, or plain vanilla, or something. And that's a complete fallacy. It's not a matter of changing anything. It's just a matter of seeing what it is. what it actually is, and seeing that the way that it actually is not the way we've been used to thinking of it. Because it's the way we used to thinking of it that constitutes entrapment, that constitutes non-liberation. And liberation just happens to be your inherent condition, which of course has always been the case. So it just needs to be recognized. It doesn't need to be achieved. It's not some new state to get to, but it is a palpably powerful condition when it is recognized, because it is in fact liberated. It's actually liberated. It's not just a way of glorifying.
Well, I have another question, unless somebody else has. This is a completely different subject, but teachers always like to say, well, your feelings aren't you, and it's really not you, they're just happening, and it's just energy, and that's fine, but why is it so, if I'm feeling, I'd say anxious, really anxious, or really, why does it feel so personal and so, because there's so many things in my existence, one thing that feels so personal and so strong and so compelling.
Well, it is
It's
personal.
not me.
It is personal and strong and compelling, but it's not that it's not you. It's that personal isn't really personal. Strong isn't really strong, and compelling isn't really compelling, and feelings aren't really feelings. It's not that they're not that. It's not like you need to cancel them out or turn them into something other than what they actually are, is other than what you're thinking of them as being. So it's not the presence of the condition again. It's what you're thinking it is.
Right.
So there's a subliminal defining it unconsciously as, oh, this is feelings and it's happening to me and it sucks and it blah blah blah. All of which is a defining. It's not that it's not happening. It's that happening is a very strange and incidental, undescribable condition which cannot be said. It's not that they're not feelings. It's just that feelings are a very weird and bizarre and inconceivable, undefinable, transcendental condition that is not anything describable in any sense, let alone as being feelings, as if you knew what that was. And happening to you, happening is likewise, and to you likewise. It's not that you're not you, you are you, but you isn't what you think it is. You, when you go looking for you, you've got a serious learning curve going ahead of you, because you isn't some simple thing that's sitting there like some little stick figure or something, but you is, when you go looking for you, you discover, wow, it's not that it's not actual, it's that it is completely undescribable and undefinable and intrinsically transcendental.
And
But that doesn't, but that doesn't negate the event. Apparent emotions may still arise, they may still be affecting you, and you may still be obsessing on them. But they aren't emotions, they aren't yours, and obsessing isn't actually obsessing. All that, and the entire event is not the way it's being defined to be. And the problem isn't the event, the problem is the way it's being defined to be.
But also importantly, the things being labeled as not personal aren't not personal. They're personal. Where else are they happening?
Well, they're personal, but personal isn't
no.
personal. Personal isn't what you,
right.
the person isn't,
That's what I'm
isn't what you
talking
think.
about. It's the personal you're saying about the person personal, even though you're calling them that. The non-personal things are not non-personal. They're equally as personal. In other words, there's a division being made between the so-called personal and the not personal, as though there's ever actually any differentiation, and there isn't.
Well, personal is not an actual category.
Not a category.
Impersonal is not an actual category. Feelings is not an actual category. And you is not an actual category. Not that those events that are being characterized as that are not actual, but they are not
what you call
they don't conform to those categories of definition. There's something completely more another. So it's not canceling or negating the actuality of the event. It's that the event is where the noticing comes in. The event, you use noticing on an event like that, and you discover, wow, there's some really weird shit happening here, and you don't even know what here is, and you don't even know what happening is.
just a little while ago, that to know who you are is an uphill battle or an uphill struggle or something. It was a lot of work.
I meant to say you have a serious learning curve ahead of you. If you go looking for yourself and expect to find it.
But it seems,
Because you're
in
onward.
my experience, it seems that I actually know, and I think everybody knows who they are. They might not admit it to themselves, and they might not have words to put it into. They can't put, but you know who you are. If you were suddenly to wake up to be Henry Kissinger, you would notice the difference, because who you are is something that you know and you have.
Well, sure.
inculcated.
I was referring to a you as contrasted to, I mean, a personal. It's happening to me as opposed to some. Who you are is you certainly known, but it's not actually a who.
It's not a who.
And
it's-
You know what it is.
the way in which it is an R is very strange.
But there is something that is known, which I put terms on, saying that is me.
Yeah, well, reality
It's not me. I know that.
yeah, reality is known. Reality is known.
Exactly.
No, there's no one who does not know reality. It's just we tie ourselves
They
in
just
knots
don't
with
recognize it.
complex misdefinitions. That doesn't negate the knowing, but it makes it
It hides it.
so sort of schizophrenic and confused that's where the love comes in. But the absolutely knowing is intrinsic. The knowing is what is.
It's also not definable.
Absolutely.
Which,
Yeah.
which
The nature of actuality is undefinable.
is like everything else.
Yeah, that proves that it's real.
The knowing is so strong, I mean, there's no way that I'm gonna send Henry Kissinger or Leif or
Yeah, that's what
Lily.
John's
There's
saying.
just, you know,
But you couldn't be.
no, I'm just actually, there is no other,
Yeah, that's what I mean. There is no Henry Kissinger. There is no Lily.
but,
Yeah,
This is
right.
description. I mean,
Yeah.
but, yeah, I mean, it's very strong.
You were using it as a metaphor.
well, I was thinking actually of schizophrenics
Yeah.
who have one knowing and then have another knowing, and they might not.
But that happens to every one of us all
But
day long.
even there, the problem is they're subliminally concretizing it and splitting it off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, a healthy person has the same divergence, but they're not splitting them off into this and that.
that's my whole point, was that even if you're schizophrenic, you know this person, you know that person in a clinical
Yeah.
sense, but it's the same knowing.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's only one knowing. Knowing is all there is. I mean, knowing is one of the most primal words.
Yeah.
Of course, like all words, it's completely inaccurate, but knowing is one of the truest words. Knowing is what is. What is a knowing.
And just to go back to Nancy's first point, there are sort of, which was knowing again, but there are things like life events, and maybe this isn't Nancy's first point, but it was my point. There are life events which you have to deal with.
Oh, everything. Yeah.
And, I'm going to buy a new sofa, or I'm going to, I'm
Yeah.
going to walk down to the store, or I'm going, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Despite the knowing, these things have a place in the world, and they happen.
Well, there's
but they're
nothing.
not-
There's
they're not
nothing
defined.
but the presentation of apparent patterning, which morphs through itself, which can be described as one's dealing with one's life, or one's functioning in life, or one's being oneself and dealing with what has to be dealt with. But all of those descriptions are completely inaccurate. What's actually happening is an intrinsic process of patterns doing themselves that are the knowing. So it's not like there's you and there's circumstances and there's dealing that has to happen. All of that convolution and complexity isn't really like that. It's more like a dream where there can be fractally infinite many elements, but they aren't actually separate from each other. And just in their apparition and complex apparent interaction is their functioning. So it looks like, oh, I'm here and I have to do the stuff I have to do because I'm in the situation I'm in my life and I'm who I am and blah, blah, blah. But that's true, but that's a completely inaccurate description. It's more like an ongoing morphing of apparent patterning occurring to itself as the very nature of radiant presence. And what we call functioning or not functioning, what we call success or failure, what we call taking care of things or not taking care of things, is this ongoing functioning of pathing within the radiance. And the radiance's idea of what should be done and how it should be done is completely different than the human perspective. There's no such thing as failure. It is unimpededly and with absolute perfection and frictionlessness accomplishing its process by all this. And the fact that it doesn't make any sense at all in human terms. I mean, you can look at the social political situation and say, God, what a mess. Humans are just like, what a disaster, what a slow motion train wreck, what a failure. And yet this is the absolute perfect expression of a transcendental process doing itself without any mismatch whatsoever, and it unerringly is doing exactly what it needs to do for its process. But its perspective is not a human perspective. What it's doing, is not catering to some personal imaginary perspective, which if non-existent.
It's so late night community.
That's right.
It's still an ongoing train wreck.
Oh, well, it may or may not be.
It's not a train wreck.
But I mean, it may be describable as that. It's not that it's not that. It's that it's like death. It's like, well, we're born and then we're healthy and then we get sick sometimes and then eventually we get real sick and we die. And to think of health as a success and death as a failure is completely missing the point. Death is an intrinsic, perfect manifestation of a process whose ends are completely transcendental and unknowable. They're certainly undescribable in terms of human terms of me getting what I want or me not getting what I want, which is just hopelessly, absurdly partialized and unrealistic.
It's a divine train wreck, Julie.
It's a divine
train wreck.
And divine train wrecks is just another word for divine dances.
Chickens on the roof.
Dance of Shiva.
Wine pouring out. All right, you get on my train. We're having a
No, I'm on your train.
You have your own train wreck.
So I want to know if I can get rid of this dogma too.
All right, which one's
Because
that?
it's so pervasive. So the real me is this completely featureless awareness that has no quality and can't be seen and is behind everything. And, blah, blah, blah. And anything in front of that that's personal is not me, but I assume it is. Okay. So
No,
when I'm liberated, I'm gonna.
You're cutting it in two. You're creating a self and other.
Good, I was hoping you
By
said-
definition.
Yeah.
You are, the real you is the totality of your reality. Everything. So to the extent there's some transcendental, pure vanilla intelligence that is untouched by anything, is unmoving, watching everything, to the extent there is that, you're that. To the extent there's the ongoing chaos and the slop of all the events, to the extent there is that, you're that. So you're everything. You're the dreamer, you're the dream, you're the dreaming, you're the whole bubble, and all of its intrinsic components and mechanisms of that, which there isn't, inclusive. You're the whole ball of wax.
No, that's easier to be than trying to separate.
Well, you already are it. I mean, you don't need. It's not even easy. It's effort. You can't not be it. You can't turn it off. It can have an off switch.
That is what there is.
Yeah, what there is what there is, and it's the sole thing that is. So if there's a you, if you're looking for you, that's what you're going to find. If you're looking for the world, that's what you're going to find. If you're looking for the universe, that's what you're going to find. If you're looking for God, that's what you're going to find. There's only one thing. So any noun you're looking for ultimately has to be that thing, or it's absolutely nothing, because there's nothing else.
If there's a you, there's no.
That's too
Well,
deep for me.
No, if you accept that I exist, if I accept that I exist, then there is nothing else.
right.
That's all.
It's true.
I mean, so
Everything-
Well, whether you accept it or not, there's nothing else.
yeah, but there's all sorts of presumptions like I and exist.
Oh yeah.
So, but there is
It
nothing.
can't
else.
be an egg, yes.
There's nothing that's outside of
No. Well,
you
outside.
or your experience or reality
No,
or
outsideness is not an actual category. Else is not an actual category. No category is an actual category. No, I mean not literally. Literally, specifically,
Okay,
no
so
category is an actual.
Say not
But the categories aren't being negated. They just aren't exclusive. They don't exclude something from something else.
It's the
What was I saying?
categories that create, like John was saying, I exist, and there's this I, and then there's this
Yeah,
existing thing.
Exactly.
But there isn't any such two
Yeah.
categories. I guess that's what you were
Even the
saying.
categories of nouns and verbs are not different categories.
Language
Nouns
is very
are
shallow.
verbs, verbs are nouns. It's all just, every word is one word. And the one word refers to the one thing. And this is it.
It's a bit like saying red is a color, right?
Sure.
You can say that, but it's just like there's not even a red on the electromagnetic spectrum to call something like that. It's just like you kind of zero into something in that general territory and say, okay, that's red,
Yeah.
a red, or this red or that red. But it's just there's all the rest of it at the same time.
Exactly. When you designate any specific experience, it turns out to not be experientially differentiable from its continuum. In other words, it includes its continuum. Absolutely. So anything you look at includes everything else. So obviously, if you name, you talk about this computer, then I'm actually talking about the totality of reality, because you can't take the computer outside of reality and say, well, here's reality and here's the computer, so the computer exists. It just isn't like that. Experience is essentially a continuum, pretty much that conforms to some definition of what a continuum is or isn't.
Yeah, that's a whole other subject.
But it's not. It's better rather than say it's a continuum. Let's say reality is not other than itself.
Yeah. but
Reality
it implies
includes
a-
itself. Reality is inclusive.
You can't even call it a continuum, right? Because that implies
It's too much.
That's too much.
It excludes discontinuity, and most of reality is extremely discontinuous. But even when it's discontinuous, it doesn't ever becomes anything other than itself.
But you can't even say discontinuous. because
That's what I'm
it's
saying.
continuous. Mhm.
one word, and it's radiant presence.
Well, that's
Right.
two words.
And every word is that one word,
Every word
which is two.
The knowing is the knower and the known. The Holy Trinity. Om Namah Shiva. Are we clear?
No,
Very good.
but that's the fun.
Well, it is the
Wow, you
fun.
have fun.
Its very nature is that it plays hide and seek with itself
Yes.
infinitely. Even though it is what it is, and it is clearly revealed as what it is, it never resolves to being that, which is the essence of it being what it is. So it's its own paradox, which presents as an endless hide and seek with itself, which is actually its coherence, its very essence, its very
First, I
nature.
feel like super frustrating.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, because you're trying to collapse it to something, but it doesn't collapse.
But then you kind of get that it's a game, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, tag your it. Like,
Yeah. It's an open doorway, and you go through it, and then it's not like you go through the open
How
doorway,
catchy
and
a name, we should use
it's
that
not
for
like
something.
it's not like you go through the open doorway and you get somewhere.
Don't
You're always going through an open doorway, and there's an open doorway. That's, I mean, that, you know, that is as a sort of an image, that
Never
really
leave the
presents
doorway.
the very nature of this. It has no end. It is its continual end.
Is its end, yeah.
It's
Experience
continual
is a doorway.
center. It's continual presence.
Experience is a doorway.
Yeah. And that doorway is open.
So the, what you said
Actually,
about
maybe
red,
we should use it on a website or something.
what Stephen said about red is also really good for feelings.
Absolutely. Any specific where you don't find an edge, you don't find a boundary. You don't find a place where it is that on one side and on the other side it isn't that.
It's like a cloud that's on the very edge.
Yes. Absolutely.
Of course,
Absolutely.
feelings, if you look at them anytime at all, they're continually not staying the same strength.
Yeah. When you go, I mean, you know, the classic way meditatively of exploring feelings is look right at it. And when you look right at it, it morphs into, because when you don't look at it too much and just hold it, oh, I'm pissed off or whatever, then it can seem to be coherent. But when you look, okay, well, what is this that I'm really feeling? And you can really go up close and personal with it and really, you know, experience what is there. And it's just this amazing universe. It's maelstrom. It's just a stew of undefinable qualities, you know. But it isn't a simple coherent thing that's just there and now you can name it and that name is accurate. I mean, that's the very essence of what I call this yoga, is when you look at experience, you discover it intrinsically and obviously completely transcends our way of describing it. And then in that light, it turns out that our way of describing it is what's been the problem all along, not the way it is. And when you let go of expecting it to be the way, to accord with the way we describe it, then all of a sudden everything makes sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but that it doesn't make sense is cool. You know, stop making sense. That was just such a brilliant mantra. You know, the intrinsic fallacy of logic and of making sense and of, you know, of conceptual coherence. No such thing. Really no such thing. And when you stop thinking there should be and stop pretending there is, it's a big load off. Because you're not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole anymore.
Yeah. It's like a star card in the tarot. You know, it's that energy. I guess it's totally that energy.
Yeah, sure. From that point of view.
This is off topic, sort of think about it. So sometimes in the morning I wake up and I think about work and what I have to do that day, and I get anxious, like performance anxiety.
Sure.
And I know it has nothing to do with reality, but it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I tell myself, you know, when you get there, it always does itself. And I know it's going to do itself all the time and let it do itself, but still somehow there's that leftover anxiety.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I tell myself, okay, it's going to happen. It's going to be fine. So I get to work, and then, especially I think it was today or yesterday, I was watching myself do this work, and I was like, oh, when I'm home, I'm in this persona. Now that I'm here, this one has kicked in, and it's way over here somewhere in this part of the, and that's why this part is afraid, because it's completely different.
Yeah. If it had to do it, it would be screwed.
It would, yeah.
But fortunately, you're not limited to being
That's
that.
how it makes it leap. That little app that does it. And when I get
That's
to
where
work,
it just
it
looks
kicks in,
straight stuff.
and it does this whole thing. It does it pretty well. And I watch it, I go, wow, that was pretty good. You know, I know that. It's the weirdest
Yeah.
thing.
And
Yes.
an important point is all of these little psychological mechanisms of our personality about anticipation and worry and all of that is not a problem, because that itself is not what it seems to be. You know,
Well, it's a problem because it wakes me up early. I'm tired.
but no, but waking up early when you're tired, feeling bad is not a problem.
You sleep really well.
No, and thinking that it's a problem is not a problem. I mean, every aspect of the personality functioning, even aspects that seem to be intrinsic, inherently frictional or problematic, are not actually that. They are. They're sub-events in a vast otherness of event, and they're basically very, very small fish in a very, very big pond. So all of these events and these personality structures and these personality, call them entanglements, whatever you want to call them, are just these tiny little layers, tiny little fractals of offshoots of other energy processes that are themselves tiny, fractally offshoots of other energy processes forever. And again, nothing is what you think it is. Nothing is what it seems to be. So that the quirky absurdities, neuroses of our personalities are not actually that.
I could buy that, but I can't buy when I'm really tired and I wish I had slept more.
No, that's true. You do, and you're free to wish that, and you're free to try and sleep better, and you're free to do your best to sleep better, and you're free to either succeed or fail in that endeavor. But none of that actually matters in terms of having a necessary outcome, actual better or worse outcome. The personality strives to achieve its goals, and it succeeds or fails in various degrees at various times to the degree it does, and none of that actually matters, because it's an energy system that is doing itself according to its nature.
Yeah, but if you have to get up early in the morning and go to work, and you're up at 3 in the morning, you're going, oh shit.
Wait, what are you going to do?
Right, exactly.
You get up early, you sleep in, or you quit your job, or you get addicted to drugs, or you shoot yourself, or you just muddle through, or whatever, right? I mean, something happens,
Yeah.
and there you are.
Right. And something happens according to its nature.
But all these sub events have no importance in themselves. Our basic stance is one of self-loathing. Typically in terms of personality. So we're very critical of ourselves and our personality functions and the quirks of our mind, and our mind doing these absurd, tying itself in knots and catastrophizing and all this stuff. But that criticality is misspent, because in actuality it matters one bit. It doesn't need to be other than it is, and it's not what it seems to be. And it's a tiny event in a vast confluence of other events. So, I mean, it's basically just lost in perspective. I mean, it kind of resonates with when we were talking about earlier, the sort of the simplistic fantasy that our personalities are supposed to fix themselves or get plain vanilla, or we're supposed to somehow rise above them or something.
Well, I don't care about. I just don't want to feel lousy. I mean, that's the basis of any spiritual seeking. You just get tired of feeling lousy.
Right, and yes, right.
So with me feeling lousy is like 2 in the afternoon, and I'm just dead tired, and my eyes are hurting because I didn't sleep well.
Sure.
It just.
Well, if you can steer that as fire under the boiler of your spiritual seeking, more power to you.
Just tell myself, okay, this is a small diamond.
But it's not about.
I feel like shit.
Ultimately, spirituality is not about solving your problems, even though paradoxically it solves all your problems. But it doesn't actually solve anything. So it's paradoxically is the operative word there.
Well, because
it solves all your problems without solving them.
Well, because not only is there nothing to solve, but what appears to be problems is more a function of a sense of resistance to situations we don't like in one way or another for whatever reasons, and instead of an acceptance of them and an understanding that they're first of all they're temporary. Secondly, they're just another apparition. It just happens to look that way, and to have a preference about it is irrelevant.
Yeah.
You can have a preference, but even that is something you're experiencing. You're experiencing preferring.
Scott, is hard to train.
That's what I'm saying, jump on
I
my
like
train,
to
baby.
Offer perspective.
Sorry?
I'd like to offer a perspective.
Please do.
Put myself on
Chopping board.
a
Sorry.
So to
My
speak.
words, not yours.
rifle range or the shoot. It seems to me it's, not everybody leave the room.
Nope.
An alignment of that which causes aliveness, beingness, that which is what makes everything happen and work, as opposed to the content of that. It's like there's your consciousness and then what consciousness are done. So instead of identifying or zeroing in on the content of that, it's more the consciousness itself, or the fact that that you are actually that which gives you your nature.
Right. And in a sense, that is true. In another sense, when you see what consciousness is, you see what all the circumstances are, and you see that they're not actually circumstances, and they are consciousness. So the whole thing collapses. But yeah.
I mean, there's a tendency, the way you've been brought up is to pay attention to the content.
Right, exactly. That's a human's problem. But
And-
the problem isn't paying attention to the content. The problem is that the content has been defined as being content, has been defined as being certain thing. So it's not the content per se, it's the definitions of the content that which are just assumed to be the content. The definitions are, we define situations into existence, and then we forget we've defined them into existence, and then we're paying attention to the situations as if they were really there. So yeah, but in effect, it amounts to we define content into existence, and then we become obsessed with content.
Well, if we're habituated into definition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is why a really very, very direct, one of the most direct paths is just to look very carefully at what you think anything is, and notice the way the experiential actuality of that thing completely and utterly transcends any definition you can come up with for it. Not that your definition is wrong, but it's incomplete. And in that incompleteness is wholly inaccurate. And that undermines the ability of defining to be powerful, which undermines the credibility and credulity in that which has been defined into existence, which constitutes our shitty lives and all the circumstances that we're struggling with. They exist as such.
Well, it exists when we make it exist.
Exactly, but when it's defined.
Focusing on something and the focusing itself creates.
No, but you see, this is the fine point I'm trying to. It's not the focusing isn't what creates the problem. It's the defining that creates the problem, because that reifies the focusing as being anything. In actual fact, you can focus in anywhere you want, and there's no harm, no foul. A liberated being has all sorts of focus, but when they're focusing, they're never focusing on anything because there's nothing for them to focus on. They're just focusing on reality. But when there's something to focus on, that something has distance. So the focusing is not actually the problem, even though that looks like the problem perhaps. But the problem is the fact that the defining which has created a something that then gets obsessed about.
I take it one step to the left of that, which is it's kind of okay to define. It's not okay to believe your definition. You have to define
Right. Oh yeah.
to exist.
Oh, absolutely.
But believing your definition is
Right. But as with everything, it's not the action, it's seeing what it actually is. So when you see what defining is, you discover it's not actually defining. It's creating caricatures. And then obviously a caricature is not the thing that it's from that. It's that confusion between the caricature and the reality that is the basis of all of pain, the basis of suffering.
The simplification of it.
Yes.
This is far out stuff.
Well, it is. It's reality is as far this, but this is as it goes. This is the extreme. This is a great extreme right here, and noticing that fact is the yoga. Is the very body of embodiment of liberation, the very embodiment of discovery of actuality.
Actually, it seems pretty ordinary.
Well, it's completely ordinary. It's the essence of ordinariness. But ordinary is as ordinary as far as it gets.
There is something, it's not a thing, but there is something that transcends everything. That's always been there, always will be,
Absolutely.
and which gives anything, whatever it is. And we've made the mistake of calling that ourself. This
Right.
A separate
Right.
entity.
Right.
Which starts and stops and changes, but this other doesn't, and it's always there.
Well,
Always.
it's not that it doesn't. It's that the way that it is includes what we call stopping and starting and change that.
Right. It isn't that, but you wouldn't have that without it.
Right. The way I put it is it presents as infinitely differentiated from itself, but it never departs from itself. In other words, it never actually becomes anything other than what it is and has always been. But it presents as if the contrary was the case. It presents as if it's infinitely differentiated itself, but it never departs from it. Unstoppably, continually.
John said about he always knows who he is. So, because there's one flavor that's John. That would be different from Henry Kissinger.
Well, there's one flavor that is John's universe, which is everything. And John can imagine Henry Kissinger existing, and that his imagining of Henry Kissinger exists in his universe.
Who woke up as Henry Kissinger? And he would have a different flavor.
No, he would not. No, he would
Whatever
not.
he's taking.
He wouldn't, because he would still be his universe. You can imagine this if my universe changed into another universe, but there is no other universe.
But if there was,
Well, if there was, yeah, sure.
then Henry Kissinger would have a different flavor.
Yeah.
That's what the
If Henry Kissinger was a teenage girl, and I was a dirty old man, the possibilities are endless.
We have the second part, but the first
Oh,
part
okay.
I was trying to make a point.
Strictly speaking, in terms of fantasy, mind you.
So to me,
that's
that's
half the battle.
is the same. It never departs from its own flavor,
Yes.
no matter what happens or what it looks like.
Right. Your reality has always been your reality, and it has always clearly and manifestly been that to itself. And that's everything. That's the totality. There is no other
It never
reality.
feels foreign, like, oh, this is
There is no foreign. Any foreignness that exists would just be a flavor of your reality. Your reality is as foreign as it can feel, but that's just the nature of your unit. Like I say, it can present as infinitely differentiated from itself. In other words, you can present as infinitely alienated from yourself, apparently, but in actuality, you never depart one iota from yourself.
there's no way.
That is not That's not reality. That doesn't happen. That is not what it is. It is that which is presents as infinitely differentiated from itself and never departs from itself.
So it's not chaos, it has some rules.
Well, it has, I don't know if it has rules, but it has nature.
Right. Nature.
And its nature is that.
But its nature is also chaotic.
Yeah, well, that's the infinitely differentiated in itself.
You guys use that word a lot, and I don't think it applies because it's like saying that other and myself, it cannot be chaotic because it's always in balance with itself. It's always smooth. It's always within its own nature.
Sure.
So to say it's chaotic is to say that somehow or other something's not quite right, or it's not functioning well, or
That's not-
This is just a
No,
semantic.
it's not.
This is just a
I'll look it up.
semantic issue. It's unimportant.
Yeah,
It's just
right.
about
Well, but
words.
it's a word that implies.
It includes all words. It is, if there's chaos, it is chaos. If there's smoothness, it is smoothness. If there's inclusiveness, it is inclusiveness. If there's divisiveness,
So
it
you
is
can't say
divisiveness.
it's chaos.
So- But it is absolutely, to the extent there is chaos, it's chaos. Because it doesn't resolve as not being chaos. It includes everything. It is what it is. Every word has been abstracted from it. It is the template for every idea and every word. So it obviously, to some degree, is seeable as, if chaos is conceivable, then it's conceivable because this is seeable as being that. If order is conceivable, then it's conceivable because this is perceivable as being that. But it's not limited to being that, and it's not actually that. So all these categories are not untrue, but they're inaccurate because they're not complete. I continually reflect on the genius of the wonderful Five Blind Men and the Elephant, story. It really encapsulates it so well. Every word or idea is another blind man going up to the elephant and saying, "Oh, it looks like chaos. Oh, it looks like order. Oh, it looks like consciousness. Oh, it looks like the four forces of nature. Oh, it looks like, whatever."
But the story kind of works because we have an idea of what an elephant looks like, and the poor blind men don't. But there is no idea of what this looks like.
Right. But the point is that it is what it is, and it's which transcends any partial point of view of it. Not that the partial point of view is inaccurate, but it's incomplete. And by being incomplete, it generates an utterly and a completely inaccurate picture of what it is. I mean, this is part of the slipperiness of this. It includes all partialities, but it transcends all partialities. So anything you think it is, yeah, it is that, but it's also more and other than that. So chaos, sure, it's chaos, but
See, the elephant is.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
the elephant is the blind
Oh
man
my
is.
God, he's getting zen on us.
Well, he is. he's entitled.
I think it's blind is the blind elephant.
Sure, but all I'm really saying is that there's absolutely no other
Right,
as it is, as it
Right.
seems.
Right.
It's just, and
right. Every seeming is the entirety. Every point of contact is the totality.
We might as well just stop talking.
Works for me.
No, I'm serious. Somehow.
You know you are.
I'm serious too.
I love talking, and I'm more than happy. with it.
No.
But
And you're not about stuff.
all I'm saying is though that somehow that just like trips it for me. It trips everything like into the blue. Just like you can't go. The descriptions can't go past that point, and then the boom.
Right. Yeah, this is it.
I noticed there was a kind of playfulness, a kind of teasing that seems to be happening with the people with just, what seems like circumstance.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, this is why one of the reasons why I refer to this inherent property of this as inherent intelligence, because it continually plays with synchronicity and puns and I mean it's not just an inert of this mechanical event. It's a profound presentation of interlocking meaningfulnesses and cross suggestions and innuendos and puns, and I mean it's it's well, as you said, playful, evocative, poetic. I mean it's pregnant with meaningfulness and profundity, explicitly. And it rubs its own nose in that fact through these very obvious sort of synchronicities and so on. I mean, it's just another, another bewildering aspect of it. That it's clearly not just an inert, mechanical process winding itself down or something. It's a profound purposefulness and it presents as if it was doing something, as if it was me. So you can never find that. But
Well, it's kind of like everything seems to have like harmonics.
Yeah.
That you don't really know or exactly, but you can feel that they're there somehow. Kind of like, and it's always going on because everything's always, well, shall we say, playing itself out. So
Yeah.
Something like that.
Absolutely.
So just like, like sometimes elation or anger or something like that, it just keeps moving, whatever it is, and just keeps. There's other things like ringing with it and humor kind of tickles into that without, where did that come from?
Sure.
It just plays.
Absolutely. And the turn of event, the way events seem to lead to other events and all, and all of that is just the interlockingly profound in some intelligent way. Not that you can, of course, ever resolve exactly what that is or how it is that, but it certainly has that flavor.
And it's moving fast.
Huh?
And it's moving fast.
Well, if it was moving, yes.
Right.
It's moving.
It just keeps happening.
It keeps happening.
It just keeps on.
Keeps on keeping.
Yes.
I hear you, sister.
Thank goodness, otherwise
Keeps
it's
on keeping
exhausting.
on.
I don't have to do all that work.
Yeah, I notice that all the time. I'm gonna get this last errand done and then I can sit down and then instantly something shows up. You gotta do this right away. It never stops.
Oh, but on every scale of frequency, I mean, even if you look at it like, I mean, that's how rapidly
Yeah.
these, and more so and less so, and on every scale of just a frequency of rapidity and slowness, it's continually transforming and engaging and morphing and presenting and doing and bending in patterns, resolving into other patterns, and endlessly.
Yeah, the whole fantasy of, one of the fantasies of enlightenment is you can just sit down and zone out and be in this bliss state, but you're never gonna get that because it doesn't stop.
No, you do get that, but you get that because the non-stopping is its essence, its very essence, and you're completely off the hook because there's no you to not be out, to be on the hook. All this doing is doing itself.
Well, let me put it another way. If you're looking if you're seeking tranquility and stillness, you're probably gonna get, I don't know, I feel like maybe you're gonna get off.
Well, you even find stillness, but the stillness is the essence of what looks like it's continually changing.
So you won't see it. If you're looking for stillness, you won't see what's real.
No, because what's real is stillness. Motion is stillness, because it never departs from itself. It's just sitting here. And all of this craziness is what it just sitting here happens to look like.
All right. I think I know what you mean.
But this is not just hyperbole or philosophy. It is felt, and it can be very clearly and palpably felt. The profundity of the truth that it is doing everything. So all of my doing, it is doing that. You know, and again, not just philosophically, but in actuality, but palpably. And so, oh, I have to do such and such. It's like, well, if I have to do it, I will do it, and I don't have to do shit because I will do it anyway.
I'll find myself
It'll
doing
get
it.
done.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a dream or a movie projection that is just unstoppably being projected, and it's not. It may look like something. It's me in the movie is having to do stuff, but that and me doing stuff, or me not doing stuff, or me resenting having to do stuff, or the whole whatever gestalt that is effortlessly happening, being done impersonally. So there's absolutely zero effort, and palpably so. I mean, this becomes the obvious perspective, and this fact is a continuous fact. So in that sense, it is peace, because it's never not that. It never stirs from that.
There's never a moment when you actually have to do some effort.
Exactly.
Step out of that.
Exactly.
That'd be a good thing to look for.
Yeah. Well, it's findable because it's and in fact it's inevitable, because it is in fact the case, and it is in fact obvious.
You see it a lot.
Of course.
I just don't see it all the time. So
Of
I'm
course.
looking for it.
Well, this is the point of this yoga, is to refine your sensitivity until it just becomes clearer and clearer to you. It's not that it becomes more and more the case, and it's not even that you notice it more and more. It's that as you become sensitive, you notice that what you were holding previously to be not noticing it is actually a version of noticing it.
Yeah. That's kind of important, I think, you know.
Well, it is.
It's like clarity, so to speak.
Has always been the case.
Well, yeah, and as far as getting it, it unappears. It just, it's like clarity is not a thing.
Ignorance is misdefining clarity.
Yeah.
There's never been anything but perfect clarity, but it's being defined as not being seen.
Yeah.
And so when you get that, wow, what I've been thinking of as not seeing reality is in fact what the naked perfect clarity of seeing reality is. It's like, oh wow, how nice. my fucking up and incompetence and imperfection is in actuality the vision of divinity. It's like, whoa, how nice. So, but it's really a matter of sensitivity rather than developing some new faculty or some new way of seeing. I mean, noticing is really a trick. It's not like you're doing anything new. It's a kind of a Trojan horse to trick you into.
Excuse me.
To trick you into appreciating what has always been the case. Oh, time for our tea break.
Oh, well, that's very exciting.
If you're watching this after the fact, or if you're watching this in real time, whatever that is, we'll be back in about 10 minutes or so. And you may want to fast forward if that's optional. If you know how to fast forward time, feel free.
Tell us how to do that. Well, that looks like a white shadow. Look at that. See the glare in there? Looks like the shadow of a man
Yeah, what is that?
in white. That's weird.
And
Huh?
ghostly
It's
presence.
reflected from something.
Oh, maybe this way.
Well, but it's not. Weird. Oh, well, wait a minute. See, you have this, which is the big fat part, and then there's this little reflection up here, which is the head.
See it?
Yeah, but
And-
oh, yeah,
And
right.
then this.
Yeah,
See?
yeah.
Lamp,
I get it.
light.
I kind of see it.
Yeah.
I don't even see the lamp. Oh, well.
Or the
I
food
don't-
is
I don't
tiny
see
layers.
That's right, or food, these mortals be.
You see?
Probably,
These punches are very good. It's the salt. That's good, it keeps me hydrated then. Oh. Mhm.
Yeah, this good. Very good tea.
Very good.
Why not?
It's ground, really.
These crazy kids.
Which
crazy? Yes. You know, get yourself a cannabis prescription.
Oh, God, it's,
No,
I'm not gonna
Eat the
Oh,
chocolate.
it's so wonderful.
And chocolate, I sleep like a
Oh,
baby.
we're still on national TV or whatever, Honeywood.
Oh, God, better not say, well, I have a prescription. I don't have a prescription, it's legal. It's
Yeah,
legal,
but
we are
still.
in California. Get over it. As she said, get over it. Part of what I like about Pam, she's blunt.
Yeah.
Even her expressions sometimes are really blunt. They look at you and they walk away, and then volumes right there, it's like, what? Oh, shit, what you say?
Trying to make a point of this.
It is a subject of YouTube. Oh, yeah. Oh, I like that about Pam. She's straight up. That's important. Anyway, I like it. She's blunt while being diplomatic. That's a skill I don't have.
I live with it.
You live with it. Yeah. That's good though. Chai
Yeah.
and vino.
Yeah.
Best of both worlds. You get up and it takes you, smooths you out.
Not too bad.
I've noticed there's a lot of good wine nowadays with the screw tops.
Oh, really?
Okay, now I'm a Philistine when it comes to wines, because I don't drink wine for the most
All
part.
right.
But it used to be you never see. I mean, even cheap wines had corks.
Yeah.
And I understand a lot of the bottles now don't even have a real cork. They have these
Yeah.
sort of,
Screw tops.
well, no, not
No,
just the screw top, but the artificial corks.
Yeah, I've seen those bottles with
Because
screw
of-
on caps.
But it's for an environmental reason that they're doing those foamy corks. Yeah, because of the cork tree.
No, that's great.
But the screw tops, I don't know.
I saw some
Some of those wines are
higher price.
yes, I've seen some very high priced,
Whole Foods in Berkeley on Gilman.
yeah, well, that could be artificially
Yeah,
hyped up just because it's Whole Foods and it may be organic, but yes, I know what you're saying.
I know.
They're good wines, they're not cheap wines.
Yeah, I haven't tried them yet, but, you know, I'm kind of snob.
You are, huh? Oh, no, I'm not a snob.
Wine mostly because I don't know diddling. Thank God I don't have that picky a palate.
Uh-huh.
I have a wider range of what's tasty to me, what's acceptable.
That's good.
I don't want slum.
I think you've got a palate than anybody I know.
Allergy. No, I mean, I'll drink wine whether it's expensive or cheap. I'll eat food that's tasty, whether, I just, certain things, I can't have chili pepper or I'll get a migraine. So it's not about being picky. And the gluten, it just gives me IBS. That's not about being picky. So, but I have a particular digestive system, but I don't, my palate, if I could have toast and Mexican food, I used to eat Mexican and Indian and all that, I'm missing out on a lot of yummy food.
Yeah, really.
Why are you missing anything?
Because I can't have cayenne. But the New Mexico restaurant looks like all the food is good, we should.
Yeah, if you're in there, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's quite good. They're
very
good
good
kitchen.
Uh-huh.
kitchen. The stew he had, what was it, poblano or something stew?
It
No,
was green chili stew with pork. It was absolutely delicious.
Oh, yeah.
But I had the shits for 8 hours afterwards. I think
It's a good
too much,
laxative.
too much chilies for me.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Really? Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. They know how to do New Mexico chili.
Oh,
Hatch
they have all. I mean, if you
Oh,
like New
very
Mexico food, check it out. It's quite
I
good.
like that
It's a
stuff.
nice decor too. It's very nicely done. They did the infrastructure well.
Yeah.
Probably the classiest men's room I've been in San Michelle.
Fantastic. Yeah. No,
If you're
The
into those
women's
kind of
bathroom is
things.
also very nice.
Right.
No, the building and the atmosphere inside is also very pleasant, and
Oh,
they've
my
done the
God.
walls, so they look rustic, kind of like the Pueblo stuff, but. And
The
then
tables
brick
didn't
walls.
look very big, but maybe
What?
in the back, the tables didn't look very big, right?
No, but there's also a
That's adequate.
smaller little room further back.
Oh, really?
So,
Okay.
it just because it happened to be an empty space, and they fixed it up, made it pretty, and
Well,
it's,
that's very cool.
and the kitchen in the back is open.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like, when you go to the back room, it's like, kind of like sitting in your own family room kitchen kind of space where you've got the,
Shall we reconvene?
Yeah.
oh yeah.
I have a question. Before the retreat, is there a dinner the night before?
Yes.
Are we gonna have it at the Roman?
Don't know. Haven't decided yet. I think not. Let's do someplace
Oh,
more
I've been
fun.
telling people, well, I mean, I'll have to email everybody, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, if you have that,
We'll talk about that when we're done here.
okay.
We'll tell you.
We're gonna resume.
Oh, yeah, we're resuming, sorry. Whoa, watch out, you can leave the furniture behind you. And the extension cord. Was I think travels.
All right, we're back.
Mhm.
Almost. Anarchy reigns supreme. Well, one point we touched on a little bit just before we had our break. That's really, in terms of the yoga, is profoundly to the point, very powerful. Is whatever is present is the totality. It's not like there's anything beyond anything. It's not like what's there is a portion of something that it is more, but the more is this that is here. This that is here is more without being additively more, or more in some sense that this is it and then this is a small piece of something vast. There's something vast. The other is this that is here, that is exactly presented fully. But not in terms of the details, because the details aren't really details. They seem to be details, but when you go looking at the details, they don't resolve into coherence. So it's just not like that. So, but the punchline, the point I'm trying to make is what is present is is the absolute comprehensive inclusion. It's not like a piece of a totality which is out there. And yet, this presence has no findable boundaries or has no findable limits. But it's not that it's more than itself, but it's not that it's more than itself necessarily by spatial extension or something like that. It's just more than itself right here, right now, in a way that is just totally irrational and you can't wrap your head around it. You know, and for me, this is really clear and experientially palpable. And I don't know how useful or practical it is to try and convey this to someone who doesn't have that sense. But nonetheless, you know, that whatever is present is everything. There's nothing missing. There's nothing beyond it. You know, anything that's not here is not. And there's of course, and there's no thing here. But you know, of course, we're always stymied by the paradox of what seems to be presenting as not actually being anything. Well, not. So this right here is the bubble of my experience. This is the whole thing, and it is everything. It is everything. There's absolutely nothing else. It is the infinite totality, completeness, and just this bubble right here, this absolutely spaceless, dimensionless, boundaryless bubble.
Yeah.
And if any of you exist, the same is true for you. So in other words, there's nothing outside your experience whatsoever, and your experience is just this present experience that is right here.
I guess a way that I know what you're talking about, and it feels like somehow the sense of that there were boundaries. Just I can't say it's gone. It's sort of like there in a way.
Well, there's boundaries are as there as they ever were. They just aren't actually there.
Yeah.
Because again, like everything else, it's not actually findable.
And so you know, this gets to the point where even that movement for the mind, so to speak, for thought to sort of find boundaries, just doesn't work. It doesn't even work as it starts to do it.
No, sure.
So it just kind of goes, ooh, yeah. They had to just keep having that kind of feeling rather than this like.
What do you mean it doesn't work? I mean, I'm constantly finding concepts. In fact, I'm trying.
Well, you find them, but you can't. But they don't resolve.
Oh, okay.
If you're looking for boundaries or
Yeah.
this as being different, being you know, demonstrably and inherently obviously different than that, and things
Right.
like that. It may present. It certainly presents in those as if it was that. But then again, when you look, it just isn't.
Yeah, so for the sort of background or threaded experience feels like that not resolving, that or it feels, you can say it that way, but to me it feels kind of like things kind of like just undo themselves as you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything undoes itself before you get there. And then, you know, it's just playing with words, but it has something. Palpable is great, you know.
The nature of actuality is very clearly and specifically felt. I mean, feeling the texture of your experience is, I would say, the clearest and most obvious way to the subtleties of all this, because it's felt. You know, the dynamism of it is felt. The unfindability of it is felt. The unresolvability of it is felt. The actuality of it is felt. You know, the completeness of it is felt. I mean, all of these, you know, they can be abstracted and we can, you know, try and talk about them and stuff, but the immediacy of the actuality is palpable. It's self-verifyingly.
Luckily, I have a short memory now.
Yeah. That's a good thing.
That's just it though. The sense I have is memory schmemory, who cares? Like I so don't need memory. For what?
Well, memory's main mechanism is to generate an apparent continuity
Yeah.
of non-existent partialities.
You have a hard time getting home.
I got GPS, man.
Yeah, you know how to use it.
Remember how to.
This knows how to use it. GPS knows how to use itself. Who cares? It just, I get there. Oh no, maybe I won't.
Yeah, I was meditating the other day, and I just felt like I was this huge force was just happening. It's just like in this huge force.
Everything.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was just like what?
We make assumptions all the time and don't really assume they are assumptions. We think of them as fact or truth or reality or something. And they're all assumptions, beliefs, whatever you want to call it. And it's very tempting to be dragged down into
And once you know what this is, even if you are dragged down into definition, that's it
that's
too.
it.
There's no drag.
You can't, because being dragged down into definition is not,
Isn't
nothing
it?
has actually been dragged anywhere. Yeah.
But I mean,
Just trying
The
to.
very notion is
but
that.
then there's the idea that I know my way home has no meaning.
It has absolutely no meaning.
Right.
Because the whole thing is based on an argument, none of the elements of which have any existence whatsoever. There actually is not a functioning per se. There is not a directions per se. There is not spatial orientation per se. There is not actual driving of a car per se. Not that the actualities that we are designated by those things don't exist, but the actualities in no way, even remotely, conform to what those ways of describing them imply. So, functioning, for example, we need memory for functioning, it's just not true, because functioning isn't what we think it is. Functioning just happens by divine fiat, essentially. And it requires zero mechanism, and if it does require mechanism, it'll manufacture that mechanism. And if it doesn't manufacture them and dysfunctions, then that is its functioning.
You said something nice about memory the other day. You said it doesn't matter what you remember in a sense, because you are your memories, so to speak. I mean, they're inherent in your being. Yeah,
and memory appears or doesn't appear according to its inherent that's its right. It's always right on the money to be just exactly the way it is. If we get everything forever, starting right now, then that's the perfection of your functioning.
Yeah, right.
I mean, these things like definitions or concepts or, I mean, just sort of how we think we're functioning in the world. I mean, themselves are more than what we think they are. I mean, what they are
utterly.
is they're fun. What they are is, well, I don't know. I mean, our mind obviously needs them. Our mind needs to do this.
Well, it needs to appear that way anyway, whether or not it actually is doing
Well,
it.
no,
It just happens to
think
appear that way.
I think it's probably part of the way our body needs blood and needs to go to the bathroom and stuff. I mean, I think our mind somehow needs to do this, but it's what it's doing is more than what we really think it's doing.
It's utterly beyond what we think it is.
Right.
But
It's both much more and much less than we think.
yeah, I don't want to idealistic about it, but there is consciousness, and and we do things with it. It's utilitarian, and
Seemingly,
huh?
seemingly, it presents as if that was the case.
We've even talked about it in these talks as an addiction. Okay,
It's what?
as an addiction, to me that means we need to look at patterns and define and
But sure. I mean, it looks that way. Yeah.
and we can do that as we're noticing, as a matter of fact.
Well, of course, it all does itself. I mean, all functioning argument, because you can't know what's actually happening. I mean, like in a dream, for example, you can dream and all sorts of events can seem to be happening, and you can be doing all sorts of things and thinking all sorts of things and remembering and forgetting all sorts of things and having all sorts of amazing functionalities. And A, nothing is happening,
Right.
and B, no one's doing anything, and C, there's absolutely nothing functioning with anything else to produce. So even though it looks that way, it can be argued and described as if that was the
Yeah,
case.
so I guess in a way, that like in quote unquote waking life, all of that is
It's a seeming. It's a way of it seeming to
it's
be.
a seeming.
Yeah.
It's,
The consciousness has a tendency to parse it as if it was that.
right.
And there's nothing wrong with consciousness, with that tendency of consciousness. It doesn't need to be corrected.
No,
But-
because
but
I'm not
if-
going to correct my dream that I had that which
You
was
don't need to. And yet you can see it is possible to have a direct and clear knowing that
I
it
was
is a dream.
finding a dream last night. You cannot believe some of it. It was a fashion show. I have no idea why I was in a fashion show.
Well,
And my
you're a
granddaughter was
supermodel. You're a
in fashion
supermodel. Of course you're in a
You
fashion
cannot
show.
believe you're a babe. Right? Fashion that we were picking. It's just so great, very fun. The reason why I started bringing that up, or what I was thinking about, is because, I mean, it's obvious we all, and we do it quite a bit, but that once you sort of realize that it is just sort of like a dream, it's not so, it doesn't stick.
Well, it's because it's not anything. It's just an inherent tendency that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what I used to, I don't call it anymore because it seemed to be confusing people, but it's what I used to call resonant modes.
Right.
It's a resonant mode, which is basically means an internally consistent coherence of the way seems to be. That, conceptualizations seem to be presented and generalizations seem to be presented and functioning seems to occur in accordance with these and all these various interlocking, schemas. This presents as if it was that, without, of course, ever actually being that or collapsing into that.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like, I mean, if you were gonna create a video game or something, you know,
Yeah.
you would have to define a whole bunch of stuff
Sure.
and act like that throughout the game. You know, then you can turn it off and you can
Yeah.
stop
And
defining
yet,
it.
and yet
that
it's
way.
actually all just strings of virtual numbers held in solid state in a matrix, in a virtual matrix of a software formula.
A video game, yeah. So,
Yeah, which is a nice analogy of this. You know, even though it looks like it's this, doesn't mean it actually is this. In terms of however it's presenting as if it was, you know.
You know, along with the awareness of this is all emotions of better or worse or anything like that, they just flat, they just can't stand at all.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, I can't even say that. It's just the whole emotion of wanting something. There's no meaning. It just doesn't even come up somehow.
Yeah. This already is fully itself. It can't be more itself or less itself.
Or better itself or worse.
Yeah.
Which is really nice, you know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's, you know, that's what they call it: enlightenment, liberation, eternal bliss, and all that while just hanging out in someone's living room. How nice.
Right.
It's
And it's on 10.
on 0 equals infinity.
Well, that's the thing, you know, that infinity bit.
Yeah.
That really speaks in. You know, it's like, can't.
that is the transcendental principle, is unresolvability or infinity.
I'm sitting here,
Yeah, when you
doing the
discover-
crossword by my mom's bed, she's smarting away. I could care less if I'm there, I'm the dutiful son, right? Just a crossword,
Austin Sperry used to have this wonderful formula he would say every once in a while in his writings. Does not matter, need not be.
Yeah, right.
Cool.
Pretty much covers it, doesn't it?
Sobering.
Very annoying that all day.
Oh,
When he read that line, it was like the end.
I wouldn't mind hearing that occasionally.
It's like any good training, though. At some point, reality, it just doesn't work the way you had in mind, and so you get tired of it. You get tired of banging your head against that particular wall. And so it's that kind of, then that whole thing just becomes a kind of simple and very accurate self-correction, so to speak.
Yeah.
Kind of like right now, relieving of itself.
Sure. I mean, that's the nature of spiritual trajectory, or spiritual path, and it's always the same thing, but it just happens faster and faster in a tighter and tighter spiral. At first it can seem to be happening over lifetimes, or perhaps over years or months and days and hours, and then after a while it gets to the point where in real time it's just continually this whirling on itself, of finding itself, and just and it never stops that seeming paradox, but it gets closer, tighter and tighter and tighter into real time, and more comprehensive.
But there's also that thing we were talking about the other day. You can't really grasp it, definitively, because it's always off.
Oh,
Always,
very slippery.
it's always there.
Grasping at mirages.
There's no now.
Now there's no now.
So actually, this actually need more. Well, we were talking earlier about there's preconceived idea, when you're spiritually seeking, that there's some kind of different state of being that you're supposed to achieve. She was talking about it as tranquility, and then there's all these words, samsara and all that stuff. What's the difference between that and the Christian idea of heaven? In other words,
No difference at all.
Yeah,
It depends on how the Christians hold it. If you're holding it simplistically as an after death condition, that's
Yeah.
one thing. If you're holding it as as a concurrent condition where there is a heaven, where they're right now
Right.
somehow into it, then that's a more sophisticated thing.
Yeah.
But
Or-
it's exactly the same idea
Yeah, the whole idea.
of projecting something outside that is in some way better or the you know the 1% or the whatever
Yeah.
of by contrast with
Yeah, or
something
it
that is
has
not.
to do with the equivalent or practice in
Yeah.
Christianity is not to sin, or
Right,
to do
yeah.
certain
Well, that's
things.
practice. There are practices. You pray and you don't sin, and you
Yeah,
do your
Yeah.
tithing and whatever else, obey the rules. Yeah, no, the whole, it's all, it's all, it's all fantasies of some completion that will be found as a result of some process.
really important thing that's different than what we've been talking about. That if I get there's some kind of an end, well,
Right.
there's no beginning and there's no end.
Yeah. Well, the completion is the inherent nature.
Right.
The end is the inherent nature, which is also the beginning.
Yeah.
So it actually, all of those ideas apply, but they apply in so radically different a way
Yeah.
than they're held to. Heaven exists, but it happens to be this that is here. Completion exists, but it happens to be this that is here. The end exists, but it happens to be this that is here, which is eternally beginning, and so on and so forth. So again, the idea is not that the ideas are. It's not that the ideas are negated, but they aren't accurate in the way that they're being held to. So all I have are drawn from actuality, so they reflect actuality, but they don't reflect it accurately. They don't reflect it completely, because no partial idea can reflect infinity completely.
Well, maybe they exist or they're because this is always looking for it.
Well, that's certainly the case, and it's also the case that these ideas are projected by people who have various degrees of intuition of what this actually is.
Intuition.
And then that's what I'm talking about. And then these ideas get garbled under people who don't have realization, passing them along and redefining them and recorrecting them.
Yes.
It's like whatever Christ said has been corrected for us by the agencies of the church and the Bible and so on and so forth to become the gobbledygook that is promulgated now. I mean, you can't tell. Who knows what the guy really said?
Right.
He was speaking from an intuition or a knowing of profundity, but it gets garbled.
Or even a realization, but then it gets idolized and turned into something.
As soon as someone who doesn't know talks about what he was saying was, what he really meant was, then you're screwed. I listened to Peter Brown on YouTube last night, and you know what he was saying? I mean, it happens even no, yeah, totally.
No, that's okay. I've already been there.
No,
Trying to explain something you said.
No, I know.
Oh my God, yeah, you have to watch.
But even in these conversations, we'll be talking and someone will say, a little while ago you said such and such.
Right.
You didn't say anything like that.
You may have said those words, but you have to take them in context.
Right.
But usually I didn't even say the words, but
Yeah, very often you have those.
but it's just the nature of semantic communication.
Yeah. Very shallow, can't reach.
Well, language as explanation or description has severe limits, but as fun as poetry may be, as inference is really of a different order.
Well, language is actually a direct expression of the inherent intelligence. So as such, it is a vehicle for transcendental communication, which can look like garbled, incomplete, hellish, misunderstanding, non-transcendental communication, strangely enough. But to go back a little bit more heavy-handedly to the discussion we were just having, all of the spiritual hyperbole and all that is pretty literally true if you understand the way in which that's so. I mean, heaven is true, the divine is true, thou art that is true, enlightenment, the glories of enlightenment and liberation is true. All of these are precisely true, but they're true in the way that they are true and not in a simplistic, linear way that could be possibly communicated in language. I mean, that's one of the most surprising things. I think one thing that really hampers a lot of sort of consensus reality from the majority of people is they don't actually believe they don't believe that what they're doing.
Yeah.
If they really believed, if Christians really believed heaven was there and all that, these things would be a little different,
That's true.
It's like
Every
it's kind of
religion, though.
it turns it into a game and kind of lip service and things like that.
Well, that's true in religion and in everything.
Yeah.
For instance, take music. Some people, almost anyone can learn to play the piano or an instrument, whatever it is, kazoo. But those people with a real insight to the music and for example, like a talent for it, will maybe learn it or not. But if they learn to play an instrument, the quality of their communing with that music or that playing is different than someone who just sort of learns it by rote. And I think most religion is learned by rote. It's something that's taken for granted, everything we're told to be true. And if there isn't a temperament of questioning something or a talent, speaking of talent, then you're stuck with the rote.
Sure.
You're stuck with following patterns because
Well,
you don't know what else to do.
This is the conundrum of the omnipresence of the majority delusion.
Right.
The
It's okay.
apparent omnipresence of the apparent majority, apparent delusion.
Yeah, it's phone. How many dupes in this one? Oh, rebels with or without a cord.
So I guess you can't have an election on what reality
What?
is. An election.
Actions
I guess we could all-
are on what reality is in one sense. They don't accomplish anything
Right.
manifestly.
Well, we were talking about a majority consensus.
Yeah.
Especially since it's experience, that's all it is.
Yeah. No. Reality cannot be collapsed down to an expression.
Right.
And so that's why no one will ever clearly say what reality is, or no one will ever agree, on a clear statement of what reality is. Because it's impossible to put it clear. It cannot be put. It is. And all puttings are clear puttings of what it is. Mm-mm.
What about opening to deeper experiences of awareness?
What about it?
Or that there seems to be a ever enriching possibility of this awareness.
Sure. This is inherently that. This is continually opening to deeper and deeper, and subtler and more profound aspects of itself, eternally. I mean, what we sort of abstract a small portion of that ongoing functionality as being the spiritual awakening or the spiritual quest. But in actuality, all experience, all reality is inherently that. Intelligence always is penetrating itself deeper and deeper and deeper, eternally, forever. Always has been, always will be. We all experience in our own history of our growth and learning and development of sophistication and subtlety as we mature and so on and so forth, and also as the spiritual quest and the engagement with more and more profound aspects of our experience. But all of that is just a spin doctoring of the inherent nature of what intrinsically. This always is looking closer at itself forever. But what we call the passage of time is nothing other than that process. And coming to see that directly and participate explicitly with that as that is really being on the cutting edge of what this actually is, of what you actually are. I mean, being with this omnipresent cutting edge of intelligence moving deeper and deeper into itself.
What did you dislike in passage of time to
That the inherent penetration of consciousness into itself more and more subtly, intelligence into itself more and more subtly, is what the passage of time actually is. And you could say all the patterns and all the apparent experiential characteristics that present in a way are almost like sparks that are being thrown off by that cutting edge. I mean, that's a sort of a poetical way to put it, but it's it has some profundity to it.
especially since time is sort of an artificial way of describing something that's just after second after second.
Yeah.
I mean, moment after moment after moment.
Yeah.
In no particular sequence or.
Yeah. Well, time is very paradoxical because it's always now, clearly, and yet now is always disappearing, clearly.
Right.
And of course that's totally irrational, makes no sense, but there you go.
Yeah.
And this is, again, this is always consciousness engaging itself, but it penetrates deeper and deeper into itself, so it abandons the more shallow aspects of itself as the apparent passage of time, but it's still just consciousness being with consciousness, so it's always now and doesn't actually go anywhere.
There's a lot of action and movement. I mean, like, it's sort of like, speeded up things of flowers.
Yeah.
Popping up out of the
Sure. Yeah, there's all this.
and growing and.
There's all this seeming action and movement, and there's no action and movement.
Yeah.
At a certain point in that ongoing deepening engagement, it occurs a certain arbitrary threshold where it begins to recognize directly and treats itself less and less in terms of partializations and abstractions, which can be called realization. But the process, but what's happening before that and what's happening after that is still exactly the same. It's always this penetrating into itself more and more deeply forever. Whatever that actually is. Some of like the Buddhist and some of the Hindu divine images of copulation, where the male aspect of deity is in sexual intercourse with the female aspect of deity, this constant ongoing interdependence. But of course, it's penetrating itself. The intelligence is the actuality is moving into itself just continually and ongoingly with intense engagement. So I mean, all these kinds of images convey that rather directly. When you recall, when I had showed the image of the snake eating its tail.
Well, I was just thinking that, I was just gonna ask
well, of
about
course.
that, is that what you
But
meant?
yeah, this is another. I mean, it's another depiction of exactly the same thing. It's ways of reflecting by resonance this fact right here, right now, of this ongoing, absolute intimate, absolute hyper motivated self-engagement of reality with itself that constitutes
Right,
your being.
Yeah, we were talking about deepening or, penetration. A different understanding. But at which point of that circle was the beginning? Then what's the, I mean,
Well, yeah, it's
there
not.
is no beginning and.
Well, it's depicted as a circle, but it's not actually a circle.
Well, no, yeah.
It's one thing that is engaged with itself.
Yeah.
And essentially consuming itself.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's an over elaboration to depict it as the circle of the body of the snake and all that.
Yeah.
But that expresses the unicity of this, that is both the engaged, what is being engaged with, and what is engaging is it itself. It's like looking at itself. It's moving into itself with absolute engagement and intimacy and intensity, which is what this is right here, right now. And so all of these, glorified ways of symbolizing it are just redundant. They're just like, hey, yeah, well, that's this. You don't need gods and goddesses and snakes and all of these things. It's just, hey, all that's just about this right here. Same old, same old.
But the fact that realization is the same as before and after, I think is interesting.
Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating. Because this has always been very clearly exactly what it is, and it even knows that.
Yeah.
And yet, strangely, it seems to have a proclivity to express it clumsily, and it gets to a point where it sort of loses the need to do that so heavy-handedly, and it can be more directly with itself, with the actual event, without needing to reflect it off into parables and images.
It's just like the hiding thing. Doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who knows? It can't be put precisely, but it's fascinating.
Well, yeah.
Same event, but still, at least in this context of the path of unfoldment, it seems to reach a threshold where its mode fundamentally shifts without becoming even slightly a different event or a different engagement.
Right.
Yeah.
Very peculiar.
And all of us who've talked about this, everyone has said, well, it's so interesting, as I've always known this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is always the you know, this is the hallmark of genuine realization, as someone says, I always knew this. This is what I always thought.
And another thing that's very common is that we say nothing really changes because the personality goes on and all that, but yet it's profoundly different.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Profoundly different without being one iota different.
And,
Figure that out.
Also, what doesn't have to be different is knowing.
Yeah, well, it's,
The quote, not knowing this. doesn't have to be different.
it can't be. It is what it is.
So, I mean, that whole, I don't get it thing
Well,
just doesn't.
Well, in ignorance, not knowing is held to be a problem. And in realization, not knowing is just recognized as actuality.
Yeah.
You know, there's no fantasy that there's anything to be known, because this is not, no ability as in resolvability is not something that actually applies to this. So, and that's the torment. The torment in unrealization is, I don't know what this is. I have to find out. And it's that fantasy of satisfaction, that fantasy of completeness or resolution, that is the tormentor.
Because that endeavor to find out can be very revealing.
Oh, it's part and parcel. It's part and parcel of its own self-engagement, because it's very engagement with it in the nature of an intense fascination, curiosity, addiction, what have you. You know, it's drawn, you know, moth to a flame is way too weak an image for the self-obsession of reality with itself that this is.
Like matter falling into a black hole.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm sure. I mean, this is this presentation of what this is here. But you know, to reiterate very specifically, the fantasy of resolution is the very essence of delusion. It's the very essence of you know, non-liberation, of spiritual bondage, technically speaking, and so on and so forth. Whereas letting go of that and seeing the actuality of unresolvability completely eliminated, which is the essence of liberation. I.e., the fantasy, the grass is greener. There's some solution out there. There's some achievement out there. There's some goal out there. There's something out there that's going to make everything right. It's going to be the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, there's some other.
A otherness, an otherness that is better than the thisness, or the solution to the thisness. And that,
Any imagination of other
Yeah.
is, by its very nature, would then be, seem to be, well, better or worse, right?
well,
Something.
I think otherness is intrinsic in the way that this continually presents itself as infinitely differentiated from itself. And yet, it's the better or worse that is implicit in defining, you know, and the definability of that this is this and that's that. So since I know what this is and I know what that is, I can determine which one I like more, which one is better or worse. That this is this and that's that is one is undefinable and that is undefinable, then better or worse is out the window. There was a time a few years ago I was talking at length about the myth of the Garden of Eden, which very specifically deals with this very issue of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and eating of that is what kicks you out of the garden. And knowledge of good and evil means value judgment, and to value judge, you have to think you know what it is you're judging, i.e. you have to have some degree of definability. Whereas if you eat of the tree of life, you get to stay in the garden, and life is just anything. It's anything whatsoever is that. This is life, this is life, this is life. But if this is this and that's that, and oh, this is better than that and that's better than this, and all of a sudden you're eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and bang, you're out of the garden, i.e. into bondage, you're out of paradise, lost in suffering. But I think it's not, again, it's not the principle of otherness per se as an otherness that is a definable this versus a definable that. So it's a definability that's exactly. And when you see that, then otherness becomes an inclusiveness, just a spice in inclusiveness rather than a division.
Well, it becomes the undoing of any notion of what this is.
Right.
Of that, or agree that this is.
Yeah, but that's all definability.
Yeah, right.
Definability is really the issue, the crux in terms of that, in terms of the fall from Eden, which is just a metaphor for realization versus delusion.
Well, what is it that loosens the grip of that fantasy of definability?
It's a discovery of the concrete experiential actuality of unresolvability. When you discover that nothing exists but experience, and experience is intrinsically unresolvable, and explicitly and obviously so, then that completely undermines definability. But definability is predicated on you can actually know what something is. And if you look at something and it is what it is, but the more you look, the more you find, you can't get to the bottom. Unresolvability is like a principle of smearing, which results in the inclusiveness of infinity.
But it seems to me you could still be keep finding, and still somehow be holding on to the sense that there's some end or some
Right.
getting there someday. So
Right. Exactly.
So there's something else.
But see, that's not finding unresolvability. Unresolvability is a final condition. When you assume unresolvability is a temporary failing, but there is ultimate resolvability, that's the fantasy that there is an end somewhere. But that is not that's a fantasy that's not an actuality. Because in experience, no resolvability is findable, period. Never has been, never will be. And that which is not even abstract, it's really clearly experientially obvious. And that fact renders definability impotent. It undermines it as being ultimately true.
So, in my experience, it seemed, just to memory serves, it's more like a kind of just fading away, like a fog lifting or something, like in the sense that, or getting more foggy, whatever. But the sense that there's, I don't see any point. There's absolutely unresolvability, and yet.
Well, no, unresolvability is itself unresolvable.
Yeah. So, like.
Which is the proof of unresolvability.
There's no like, okay. Wow. It's just like.
Resolvability is a moot point. I mean, it's irrelevant.
Right.
It's not
Anything. It's like suddenly you realize that whole thing just doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter. So it's like the whole basis for worrying about something, the whole basis for
It's gone.
is so.
Well, what is it you see that makes it not matter? How would you put that? And there was a time when definability mattered, and now let's say it matters less or it doesn't matter. How would you say, what was the discovery? How would you verbalize the discovery or the seeing?
Well, things keep just, well, I think it's more like this. Things keep coming up and I like it.
Right. Well, I think coming undone is a euphemism for unresolvability.
Yeah, but I like it now.
Well, yeah,
I'm
unresolvability
not
is
trying to fix
exquisite.
it anymore.
Right.
So I don't know how that happened.
Which is the fantasy of resolvability.
Well, maybe so, but I don't. So there's no event that didn't happen.
No, well, I'm not talking about an event. I'm talking about a discovery. The noticing that in fact things keep coming is exactly what I'm calling the discovery of the actuality of unresolvability. The fact that there is no stable anything that actually is findable as actually being that, period. You know, because everything is an ongoing morphing into what? You know, I mean, everything is who knows. Everything is basically a question, or fog. Foggy everything is foggy, which is another euphemism for unresolvable.
So I mean, at first you could say for years it was like difficult and struggle, and then there was like maybe less struggle. Then there was kind of forgetting thrown in there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point there was a kind of I sort of see this, and it sure seems like that. And then it was like, this is actually, and then it was kind of like, this is kind of fun.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's kind of like, there's this, like, the falling is like, I want to do it.
Oh, it's exquisite because
that even makes sense.
Yeah, because it's a profound engagement with actuality.
So, but it's just like there's no, it's kind of like I wake up in the morning and okay.
Yeah, it's an endless slipstream. It's an endless freefall. I mean, all of these ways of putting it are ultimately, metaphorical because it itself is unputtable. Calling it unresolvability and all that is again trying to pin it down too heavy-handedly. But it's the nature of language. Anyways, it's about quitting time. In fact, we've actually gone over, so you all have gotten more than your money's worth.
Yeah.
Oh, YouTube's free. Oh, so farewell.
Good.
It's a kind of growth.